Hey, we had a technical difficulty there. My fault. But today we're discussing recruiting in the cybersecurity industry, tips and tricks for. Oh, and I still have technical difficulties, man. I'm having all kind of problems today. Anyway, we have technical tips for recruiters, for career hopefuls, people to expand their career, want to expand their career, get into the career, as well as hiring managers. Today on OT Exposed Raw. That's right. I just did this, didn't I? Turn it around. That's right. It has nothing to do with today's show, but since I'm in Houston, Astros are in the playoffs, and I'm happy about that. I have an Astros jersey, got to show it. I don't have any Red Sox to show. Do you know why? Because Red Sox are useless. Oh, I did not say that. I did not say that. I'm going to have to edit that out. Oh, wait, this is Uncut, Unapologetic. So I can't cut that out. I'm sorry, Red Sox fans, but I'm not really. Anyway, today on our show, we're gonna hear from a recruiter from the recruiting perspective, and this is pretty unique because a lot of the times we hear from the cybersecurity industry, the workforce, we hear from hiring managers, and we hear that there's a skills gap, and we hear that we can't find talent. And on the other side, we have the hopefuls, those looking for jobs, getting into the career field, or those moving on to other jobs that are already in the career field. We hear from those individuals that they can't find a job. But what we don't really hear from, that I've experienced, we don't really hear a lot from the recruiters. We don't hear their perspective and their story. And they're having just as much difficulty as everybody else, if not more difficulty. We'll talk about that in a minute and why. But so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. It'll be a little bit of OT discussion, but a lot of cybersecurity discussion, but also, talk a little bit about how that applies in the OT cybersecurity and hiring. And so that's why today's guest is a recruiter. We don't have Pascal today, and that's because he's been delayed on a flight. So he's in transit, and he was supposed to be back. And so it's just me and our guest today. And so those of you that were just here for Pascal, I guess you can just go ahead and leave. Hurt my feelings. Go ahead. Doesn't matter. But anyway, let's go ahead and welcome our guest then. Today's guest, Alan Vargas. How's it going?
Clint, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Very well as well in this deep well. So you're in Houston, right?
I sure am. So our office is off of Westheimer, but I'm out here in Tomball.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm hopefully you were pleased by my offering to the baseball gods today.
I'm loving it.
Where it is there?
I'm originally a Cubs fan. Still kind of hold on to them a bit, but I mean, it's Clutch City, right? I mean, I know that's a Rockets thing, but you got to support your local teams, and more importantly, you got to support your Texas teams, right?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't call Houston Clutch City. I mean, look at the Texans. Got a good soccer team, got a good basketball team off and on. Baseball finally is a good team. I don't think the Texans are ever going to pull through. They keep selling their players. Anyway, we're not here to talk about football and baseball and sports and all that, although I would love to talk about that. But why don't you give us a little introduction? Talk to us a little bit about who you are and where you come from.
Sure.
Other than Chicago.
So, okay, no, great. No, so, I'll just start talking about, myself. I know I work in recruitment, and as many as any other industry is, it's all about relationships. So just to give you an idea about my background, I've been working recruitment at some level for the past 2 years. And the last 10 years before that, I worked as an industrial engineer, senior engineering manager for a global company, having teams all over the world. And I think what I found and what kind of led me to recruitment on one hand was I really like working with teams and building teams, developing people, working on expanding and investing on their skill sets. And that's what attracted me the most. And going into recruitment was working with people. Now, in previous lives, right, I'd be working with my direct reports. I'd have examples to where, I had a guy working on a production line that, we talked about, well, I want to do software engineering. And then so I sat down with him and we came up with the plan. And that plan was, all right, well, let's look at one of our workstations. It takes 60 or 70 clicks or types to finish a work order. Let's do something about that. And then on his own, he looked at some Python. He looked into Python for himself, and he got it down to, I think, between 15 and 20 clicks. And we saved a bunch of time, a bunch of money on the production line because of him going and investigating that on his own. And now he's a software engineer, where he had no software background to begin with. And so I kind of took that as like an indicator. It's like, okay, what's a career that does this? And how can I leverage my technical background, especially manufacturing, and kind of tie what I would have a lot of passion doing with my background and what I've been really good at doing. And that's what led me down the path of specifically cybersecurity recruitment. That's my favorite part of the job. Obviously it's a candidate market right now, or we'll talk more about that here in a bit. But it's talking to candidates about what they're interested in right now, as important as what the clients need. But a lot of times, a lot of my conversations are, what are you interested in? And then help me figure that out with you or for you if you haven't already figured it out. And that's the kind of companies that we're going to work with, because I want to make sure that the candidates that I'm working with know what they're getting into and are passionate about what they're getting into before we start even having conversations with clients. So, kind of went into some detail there, but just kind of give you an idea of the journey of my approach and kind of led me to this point. And then what's great about Hayes, the company that I work for now, and doing that is we're the only 50-year-old company, huge outside of the U.S., getting bigger in the U.S. every day, every month. But we're the only of our scales. At the time when we started, we were the only one that of our size that had a practice dedicated to cybersecurity. Now there's other agencies that do it, but we're still the largest. And so that's something we take a lot of pride in, and a lot of pride in the relationships that we have in our candidates to take that same approach.
So I find that interesting. I didn't realize, that you started off as an engineer, and we met at HughesecCon, the Houston Security Conference. You were, I guess, the moderator, not the moderator. What are they called? You were the person responsible for the track, the ICS OT track that I presented him. And I got to throw this out to I have a lot of friends that are recruiters, and if you're watching or if you end up watching this video, hey, don't come to me saying, how come you didn't get me on the show as a recruiter and everything like that. Alan approached me at the track and said, it would be a good idea to talk from the recruiter's perspective. So he approached me, you didn't. So he's on the show. Although I would like to get in a future show, I would like to have 2 or 3 recruiters on, and then I'd like to do another show to where we have a recruiter, a hiring manager, and a candidate, and just kind of talk. And I think that would be really interesting. And I'd like to follow up with that really in a week or 2, and just to keep this conversation going, but from these different perspectives, and see if we can drill down into where some of the problems are with the disconnects in the hiring process and in the cybersecurity workforce industry as a whole, because I think that's where all this spawns from, right? And the other thing too, I got to mention, so this show originally started talking about the latest news and things like that, but we kind of gravitate towards whatever our audience wants to talk about. And the workforce development has just been a huge topic that people want to hear from, that you're also the biggest crowd right now. And I want to throw a big shout out to my friend Gerald Ozier at Simply Cyber that, we're not trying to compete with your show, brother. This is simply just where things are going, but I am going to throw a plug for simplycyber.io. That's Gerald Auger. There's this website, and he has a YouTube channel that talks almost exclusively about the workforce, hiring in the workforce, the different aspects of the cybersecurity career field. That's his YouTube channel. So be sure and go there and check that out. And then also, he just wrote a book, and I mentioned all these in my talk too, by the way. Didn't I, Alan? Didn't I mention it in my talk?
Sure did.
So there's proof. And that he has a book called Cybersecurity Career Master Plan, which talks all about the trials and tribulations and tips and hints about getting into the cybersecurity or expanding your career and getting into just maximizing your career. So we'll look at those. And I also have to say, speaking of my talk, by the way, I've had several individuals take me up on my offer to send their resume for me to look at and give pointers on their resume and for cybersecurity. And I'm backlogged. I apologize. I haven't forgotten about you. I am going to get to those. Been so busy after HughesSecCon. I'm getting to those, and I will take care of you. I promise. All right. Now that I got my grievances out of the way, let's get rid of that there. Let's talk a little bit about in general. So there is one form or fashion, we do have a skills gap. We have a disparity in the number of job openings and the number of jobs being filled in cybersecurity. And I want to hear from your perspective. Where does that stem from? What's causing this skills gap?
Well, I mean, just to call out one of the things I believe you called out during your talk was, I mean, yes, I mean, is there directional data that says that maybe there's a skills shortage? Definitely. But it's also, and like, again, to say about your talk is that it's how some of these job descriptions are written, right? Like how they're being written. And I think it's also like maybe the maturity, not of the hiring managers, but like of the available knowledge in the market for hiring managers, for recruiters on how effectively write them. I mean, would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, that's definitely one thing that I pointed out, right? Is that I don't think we do have a skills gap, but I think it's exacerbated by a hiring problem, not the fact that there's not enough skilled labor out there, skilled individual. That's skilled labor. It's not really a labor job, but anyway, there's not enough skilled individuals in cybersecurity out there. It's not that's not the fact. I mean, I think that there are a lot of hopefuls, a lot of people that are out there that want to get into cybersecurity, but there's a hiring problem. I think also there's a qualifications problem in terms of, it goes back to the hiring problem. And what are the qualifications you're looking for? How do you express those qualifications? What are you looking for in individuals, and where are you looking? I think those are big problems, right? So talk to me a little bit about the types of individuals that you're finding that are coming to you, or that you're finding, right? Because I guess you seek them out as well. And so talk to me a little bit about the people that are coming to you in terms of looking for jobs, want help from a recruiter, and the problems they're facing.
Right. No, great question. So I think it's, to kind of backpedal a bit about like, the maturity of how these job descriptions are written. If that's, I think, causing some of the challenges for job seekers, right? In that, how do I write, how do I know if I'm a good fit for this role, if I should even apply to it? If I can make like a metaphor back to my manufacturing days, like in cybersecurity, there are parallels, right, between manufacturing and the manufacturing, right? If you're running a assembly plant, you have forklift drivers, you have assembly technicians, you have manufacturing engineers, and then you have design engineers, right? And those are pretty well defined in a manufacturing environment. I think that they are definitely well defined in cybersecurity, but I think more often than not, you find job descriptions where you need a design engineer, but that can also drive a forklift. And I think that can be super confusing, and not confusing, but maybe even discouraging to an extent for job seekers. So when that comes up, and kind of my feedback to them is okay, so great. Like, let's use the job description as almost like our North Star, our Northern Star, right? Let's look at, let's get not just one, but let's say half a dozen or a dozen to them. And then let's try to find some commonality between the roles themselves, and then see if we can basically set some categories of the types of roles and then the types of companies, right? And so once we do those two things, that kind of helps us get levels set for then now let's look at our background and how they match up with these companies, what they're doing, and what they're asking for, and see what to what's our highest T value, right? Like what's relationally the most effective to kind of move forwards to, because as a candidate, a lot of times one of two things will happen. They'll kind of blast out the same resumes to all these different roles and get no traction, or they'll spend an absurd amount of time tailoring each resume to each job description, and so they end up not applying to enough job descriptions. So by using this process, like, no, we're definitely not going to get be as effective getting traction with as we would if we spent 99% of the roles, but it's better than 0% directional with hundreds and hundreds of roles that they might be applying to. Like I saw somebody the other day, they said they applied to 400 jobs, got 50 interviews, 10 second interviews, and 2 offers. And I think it's great, that tenacity, but then that just goes back to me is, well, if you started with 400 job applications, what was your plan to begin with? What were you thinking about? Like, not just what you want to can do now, but what is the company doing that's attractive to you? And how are you communicating how your existing skill set and what you're interested in can help them grow in the future? So, so I think it's just to kind of wrap it all together. It's a lot of them just come to me without a plan. And my favorite thing to do is have that conversation. Like, what does your plan look like?
So what I gathered from what you said is that you definitely want to have some customization for the job roles you're applying for, but you don't have to individually do it to the granular level of every single one. But you also don't want to just blast the same resume out to everyone. And so it's about having a plan. So you need to strategize, is what I'm gathering. When you're going out there and applying, you do need to have a plan. Don't just blast out resumes like you're fishing and you're just sitting and waiting, cork fishing. You want to bass fish. You want to have a plan for where you think the good fish are, and you want to use the right bait, and you want to, get the right temperature, the right water on the right days, and all that good stuff. I actually know nothing about fishing. My dad was a semi-pro, but I'm just using references here because I think references make me sound intelligent. But so anyway, and it doesn't work. So, but no, I think that's all. That's good. That is exactly that's the advice that I give throughout my career. That's how I've had success in my career with getting jobs is tailoring, but not too much, right? Also, I think making sure that you put your the way that I tailor is that I have things in my resume that match job requirements, and I put those at the top of my resume, and I try to use as few words as possible, especially for those recruiters or those hiring managers that use word searches and things like that. So I take all the best qualifications that match and put those up top, and then starting with my strongest first, and then all that good stuff. So moving on so that's the candidate side. I think on the hiring side, there's a problem of, and we talked a lot about this during my discussion at HughesCon, and I think that we continue to have this discussion on conversations on OT Exposed whenever we talk about the subject of hiring. But the problem is, and then you mentioned this during my talk too, is we blame the hiring managers a lot of the times for saying, look, you're looking for the unicorn. You're asking for someone that has experience programming 5 different brands of PLCs across 3 different or 4 different industry verticals. You're wanting technical, but you're also wanting someone who could speak to CEOs and write reports and also do sales. I mean, I'm not joking. I've seen these job descriptions that literally look for somebody who's technical, but can also write, but can also talk to CEOs, who can also sell, who can also program 5 different languages. And it's just absurd. So, where does the problem lie? Is this, and I've seen it a lot, so it is a problem. Is this a problem with hiring managers looking for the unicorns? Is it a problem of hiring managers not having control of their job descriptions and it's HR doing it all? Or is it, where is that disconnect? Because you mentioned some things during my talk about where that disconnect is. And I would like to spend actually some significant time today talking about job descriptions, whose problem it is, and how to fix it and all that stuff. Because I think that, to me, this is my personal experience and this is my opinion, is that there's a bigger problem on the hiring side than there is on the candidate side. Granted, the hiring is producing the problem for the candidate, but I mean, it's more the fault of the hiring side than it is the candidate's side.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of components, right? I think let's kind of break it up between HR and the hiring manager, and let's just start with the hiring manager, right? I think that one of the challenges is this kind of this thought and approach is, well, that's how I collected the knowledge that I have to be in the role that I'm in now. And so my situation was unique. So I should be able to find somebody with a similar collection of experiences and plug them right in as my previous role or, an adjacent role. And I think that, that thought process is probably more prevalent than we care to exist, than we care to acknowledge. And I think it's less so on like, okay, what core competencies, of all the experiences I collected, certifications I collected are, mission critical to the role. And to say it differently, what are my needs to haves and nice to haves, right? And I think that, just that's part of the value, even that, internal HR teams have with the hiring manager, is not to kind of downplay it by saying bringing them back to reality, but like more so it's being, it's like, I think I had a mechanic that used to say, quality, speed, and price, pick two. And I think it's working with these hiring managers to kind of figure out what those two are in these job descriptions. If you can wait for the unicorn, great. If you can't, what is mission critical, for the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, and what can you help support? That's part of it. And I'm sure you've seen, similar things, working with either candidates hunting, searching jobs, or even other hiring managers that might leverage you in your experience in the space, huh?
Exactly. And here's a comment from the audience saying, requirements, a fresh sales engineer with 10 years of experience in cybersecurity. I agree. I mean, these are the ridiculous things that you're seeing out there, right? I mean, you're seeing, they say they're junior positions. They don't say entry level, but they'll say junior position, but they want 5 to 7 years of experience in a junior position, which is ridiculous. But so I think that, you're right in that the person, if it's not HR and it's the hiring manager writing the job spec, I think it comes down to, number one, you alluded to this, in that you're going to write a job description for somebody to backfill you or to backfill your top person or something like that. I think also sometimes that has to do with budget. Like you don't have time to hire a team, or you don't have budget to hire a team. So you want, or maybe you're not a big enough company to where, you're looking for a team. You're looking for one person who can do it all. People are trying to save time and money by finding that one person who can do it all because they only have budget for one person. I mean, the problem with that is, especially in the OT industry, when you find somebody who can speak to CEOs but can also code, who can also program PLCs and build labs, who can also pen test, who can also do GRC, I mean, that's a $250,000, $300,000 a year job in most cases, and I'm talking Houston cost of living, right? And so the problem with that is when you do hire that person, and if you can afford to pay that person what they're worth in this industry, what's going to end up happening is you're wasting money on that person, because the chances of that person filling the types of job roles that come with that high price tag, the pen testing and the coding and the reverse engineering and all that, those people end up doing the bulk of the work that is in most demand right now, which is GRC, governance, compliance, architecture. So you're wasting money on someone who's who costs you, $250,000 a year for work that somebody can do for 100, 110 or whatever. I mean, so that's one issue you have. And I think it goes to the mentality of the industry that if I am looking for that person, like I can't hire a team. I'm looking for that person who can cover all my ICS OT cybersecurity needs. They look for that person who could do it all based on qualifications rather than looking for aptitude or hiring from within. So instead of talking about what are the qualifications that such person would have that can do it all, let's talk about, from your perspective as a recruiter, what are the type of attributes and let's call it aptitude that you would look for in a person who could fill such roles. So, some hints to both our hiring managers as well as our candidates. Instead of looking for hard credentials and hard experience, what are some other things that you can look for or other attributes that you could have so that you could find someone who is capable of doing that position and maybe growing into that position with a little bit of training and whatnot to, number one, save hiring managers money. Number two, increase the workforce using more junior or entry-level positions instead of looking for the 100 unicorns out there.
Right. No, and I think just to piggyback up on two of the things that you're saying, one of the things specifically about having multiple responsibilities rolled up into one role, I think we're seeing that for two reasons, right? One reason is, let's just say, inexperience of the hiring managers. They might look at bundling multiple competencies in a single cybersecurity role, similar to like maybe you'll bundle a developer that knows multiple languages, and like it doesn't equate the same way. Like you just because you're a developer knowing multiple languages doesn't mean like that same thought process is going to work. Like I need a cybersecurity expert that has expertise in XYZ domain, because they're that much more distinct, right? Like it's almost looking for a full stack developer for every single senior cybersecurity role. Right. And so the other thing, and like, let's say even if they are experienced hiring managers, is the most dangerous thing, I think, in the context of that is when you look at it from a perspective of value, or like bundled, like you're getting a discount because you're getting things bundled, right? Because, for example, one conversation that I had a long time ago was maybe, like, hey, we want to hire someone with, a governance background that has a good threat hunting background, that, in a pinch, we could use them for that. We could use them for Python to automate some scripts. And it's, and I hear what they're saying, but, we'll pay, over 200 for that, or between 180 and 220 for that. But it's like, hey, what you're really asking is to bundle maybe 3 different people that are getting paid $150K each into one role just to save money. And a lot of times what you'll end up doing is end up losing money, because like their workload is going to be way more invested into one of those domains over time. Like it just occurs naturally, right? Like, I mean, there's no way anybody, as much as we would like to believe, says, hey, Monday I'm going to work on this competency, Tuesday I'm going to work on this competency, Wednesday I'm going to work on this competency, and then I'll be back starting Thursday. Yeah. I think that's what the perception is, and it's just not real, right?
Yeah, this isn't Progressive Insurance. You can't bundle and save.
Exactly.
But exactly. There's no flow here. No flow.
Right. But to your
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So I think for hiring managers is to have your current hiring needs, and I'm sure a lot of them already, but in the context of just not backfilling. But like, what are your strategic objectives over the next 3-4 years? And how do you tie the capabilities of the role to those long-term objectives, right? And then also look at what components of those that you can bring on consultants for, right? And so to say it differently, if you look at it that way, maybe you do bring in one person who's really good at, this one component for 180K, and they are fully devoted to that, and then have them oversee, maybe bringing in a consultant, a third party, a service to kind of execute against the rest of them, so they can build up that competency and awareness. You'll end up saving money and time versus trying to have this one strategic unicorn in the whole thing. It rolled up all into one. And then also too, like I think by doing that exercise, that'll help you write a much more distinct job description. And then also, like, it just streamlines everything from screening candidates to the interview process to onboarding, all these different things. And then also, again, like another peripheral benefit to that is it helps you refine at a much higher level of what your strategy needs to look like versus, hey, we got to plug this hole because this person's leaving.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that the hiring managers, they know they need help. They know they need these things done. And instead of either okay, maybe they don't know exactly what they need, so they just kind of throw everything in the kitchen sink into the job description and say, well, let's just see what we get. And I think a lot of times they write one job description, even though they may be willing to hire 2 or 3 different people to fill, they may have 3 roles all with the same job description, right? And they're even though they may not find one person that meets all those skills, they may find 3 people that covers all those skills, but it's not reflected in the job description, which is there's a key point for candidates. Even though you don't meet every single requirement on the job description, but if you meet some or all or a lot, apply anyway, because that may be the case, right? They may be looking for you just to fill some, and it's just a crappy job requirement. I look at it like this, and I literally just realized this, because I think a lot of men fall in this category. This is like a real guy thing. And my wife gets on me about it, and I realize I do this. So I keep stuff because I might need it one day, right? So we don't throw shit away because we might use that one day, especially techies, right? Geeks and techies, right? Like I'm not talking about like keeping your old Nintendo, because that's like nostalgic. That's cool. But I've got 12 volt, 5 volt, 9 volt power adapters, AC power adapters all over the place. I've got different types of old USB cables and serial cables and adapters for everything, or tools or whatever. So I will keep stuff and store stuff just because I might need it one day, right? And I think the same mentality is carrying over into job descriptions.
Ooh,
So I'm writing a job description based off of what I think I might need one day instead of what I need right now. And I think that's why you see the hunt for unicorns, right? Either that or you're Voldemort or something and you need the silver blood. Yeah. But I think that, I think that's it. I think we tend to write job descriptions, and I've written job descriptions, and I've, been in those positions where I think we write job descriptions based off of what we might need, even though we don't need it right now. Let's write job descriptions for let's see what we can catch for things we might need down the road, instead of, like you said earlier, dividing those job descriptions up into different job descriptions for different people you need. I think we're just kind of going, hey, let's write a description for what we think we will need. And I think that's skewing things. What are your thoughts on something like that?
I couldn't agree more, like, about your point about apply anyway, because you're right. I mean, and to be somewhat critical, until employers or whoever's posting these job descriptions quit being cheap about trying to save money on their job boards by only posting 1 instead of 3 or 4, you're going to have to do that, right? Until they're more succinct on that. And I think also too, maybe not a red flag, but like a medium orange flag, if they're using words like unicorn in their job description, I mean, they could mean a unicorn, but I mean, a unicorn's a unicorn for a reason. They're rare. And I think the word unicorn is overused for finding candidates. I think even companies, I think there's like a technical term for unicorn in like the startup space. I'm not too familiar with it. And maybe those do exist, but I mean,
yeah, I've just to be clear, I've never seen the word unicorn be used in a job description. Unicorn tends to be our defensive word for saying, stop looking for the rare golden unicorn type of thing. But I've never seen that used in a job description.
No, definitely. But like things like, wear a lot of hats, like you'll wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Just be wary of that, like as a candidate, because you definitely, like for roles that are leadership roles, right? You do want to come into a sense where you can kind of define your own roadmap. But what you don't want to do as like a candidate, come into a role like that, because a lot of times, because there's always a small chance that just gives them a license to kind of take advantage of you, like in terms of giving you too much responsibility or too much scope of work too soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's just asking the right questions too on on these interviews, and as you're fielding companies too, and like especially to go back to my point about creating the plan for candidates and for like hiring managers creating their plan. I think it does, like I mentioned, the same thing it does for hiring managers in terms of bringing their vision and their strategy into focus. It does the same things for candidates as they're going through a similar exercise into creating, maybe the 3 or 4 resumes that they're good, strong resumes that they're going to use to apply to different types of roles. Is you're going to get, by the end of you doing that exercise, by the time, more than likely after you finish your first somewhat directional resume, and definitely by the 4th or 5th, is you'll have a very clear vision in your head of what you want to do in your next role, and then more importantly, what type of company you're going to look for in the next role. And then from your research on these companies can tell you, do they have it figured out? What kind of projects are they looking on the next year? And how can I come in and contribute right away?
Yeah, no, that's good. Just real quick, Aaron says that he's definitely seen rock star in a job description. So yeah, I would say hiring managers don't use bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Give an actual job description and be honest about what the job description is and what the expectations are. And I think it's what's more important to me, I think, so kind of piggybacking on what you just said, Alan, was I think it's more important to nail the duties and job descriptions more so than the requirements. Like, instead of saying, maybe give some very light ideas of like, here are the requirements. And I wouldn't even really call them requirements. I mean, and by the way, I think it's in today's day and age when there's talent everywhere, I think requiring a college degree, requiring certifications, is horseshit. I think that you should, that should be a plus, right? We prefer you to have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD, whatever. We prefer you to have these certifications. Those are pluses, but not required. And so anyway, but that's why I think that you should say in your job description, right? Potential qualifications over requirements. Now, there are certain valid requirements, like certain jobs may require you to have a security clearance. Certain jobs may require you to be a U.S. citizen. Certain jobs may, require you to, I don't know, write C++ because it's a C++ coding job. But you should not put things like tenure as a requirement. Certifications, degrees, credentials should not be a requirement. Credentials should be a plus. Credentials are an indication that you're in the right ballpark. They should never be a requirement. Requirements should be legal requirements, skill sets that are totally related to the job, those kind of things. So you should have requirements, which should be very narrow. Very specific, and should only be like, those are make or break things because you can't do the job otherwise. Then you have pluses, or we prefer these things. So, okay, it would be a plus if you had these certifications. It'd be a plus if you had this and this and this, because to me as a candidate, then that lets me know, okay, these are the drop dead requirements. Like, okay, I'm not a U.S. citizen. I can't apply for that job or whatever. I am, but I'm hypothetically speaking, going to get myself arrested. So anyway, so or whatever. So I know right there and then that like, I don't meet those requirements, so I can't apply for the job. Then I look at the other things that other people put as requirements, like this certification. That's right. Now I can say, all right, I know I have these skills, but I don't have that particular certification, but I can still apply. Now, that job manager still may say, no, I really need the CISSP, and may not look at it. However, an open-minded job manager, or at least a candidate that looks at that, will look at it and say, I still got a chance here because I know I have these skills that apply to that certification. I know I have this or this or this, so I'm still encouraged to apply. And then you should, the most verbose thing on the job, it should be the job description, the actual duties. What will you be doing? Let the candidate know what they're going to be doing and describe, okay, you're going to be talking to these people. You're going to be talking to this. You're going to be doing this. Because to me as a candidate, I think that's the most important thing. Tell me what I'm going to be doing, because candidates, you should be thinking about this. You're interviewing the company you're applying for just as much as they're interviewing you.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the way a job description should be. Requirements are only those things that are absolutely required to do the job. As in, if you don't have this, you can't do the job. Then you have the recommended qualifications that you may or may not have, but you're in the ballpark. And then the job description is me as the hiring manager. It's my turn to be interviewed, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you're doing, what you're going to be doing in this job. That way the candidate can look at it and say, holy shit, like that's a lot. I don't want to do all that and not apply. Or they'll look at it and be like, yeah, okay, I can do that. Regardless of the qualifications that you want me to have, I can do that.
Absolutely.
That's the way the entire process should be.
I mean, if you think about it, that's how everything in the world works, right? So I think somebody told me a long time ago is that if you can't explain it to someone, or maybe it was in a book, if you can't explain it to someone in 6 minutes or less, you either don't know it or you don't really know what you want.
I can't explain anything in 6 minutes or less. You've heard me talk. So,
but you know what I mean? As far as, you know, for a role, for like most roles, let's say maybe not 100% of roles, but like 60, 80, 90, let's say 85% of roles, you should be able to explain someone in 6 minutes or less. But let me ask you this question though, as someone has written, you know, I'm sure quite a number of job descriptions, of work with people that have written job descriptions. Have you felt, or do you feel that hiring managers and HR feel obligated for them to be their job descriptions to perceive as long? Because maybe they're afraid to make them too short, because not that they won't get the right candidates, but that you know, they just won't be perceived as knowing what they want because they're too short. Does that question make sense?
Yeah. I someone who's written job descriptions, I know that I fell in that trap of I want to be as verbose as possible so that I can kind of like this is exactly what we want. And you know, and I think I was wrong, right? I think people fall into two categories. There's the hiring managers that you get too verbose for whatever reason, like we said before. I don't know what I want, or I know too much of what I want. And I think HR, when HR is responsible for the job descriptions, I think a lot of times what happens is HR goes to hiring manager and says, give me some qualifications, give me a write-up of what you're looking for. They give that to HR. HR translates that, throws it into ZipRecruiter, and translation is lost at the HR level. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, or I think maybe HR throws a wide cast net and then says, hey, hiring manager, sort it out.
Yeah. Do you think HR can do a better job on pushing back on these hiring managers when they get their initial write-ups?
I you know what? Rather than saying, do I think HR could do a better job of pushing back? I think hiring managers, yeah. But I mean, I think that hiring managers and HR can just do a better job coordinating and communicating with each other than they do. I think more effort needs to be put into the job descriptions and the hiring process on both sides. And that's easier said than done. I know everybody's busy. Everybody's got a job to do and everything like that. But I think that if you just follow that formula, and, you know, my wife will tell you, I think I'm right all the time. But, you know, if you follow that formula that I just said earlier about requirements are drop dead requirements, you can't do the job without it. Qualifications are the things I'd like you to have, and things I'd like to see. But here's the job description that I'm telling you what you'll need to do. And if you follow that formula, whether you're HR, hiring manager, or candidate, I think it'll be clear to everybody. And just, you know, be as straightforward and honest as you can on both sides. But I think a lot of the times, if you fall into that category of, I don't know what I want, so you're going to end up in the same problem. You're going to say, well, I'm just going to write all this shit out that I think you might do. And the phrase that I hate the most. What's the phrase that everybody hates the most, seeing on every job description and or in your employment agreement, and other duties that may be assigned and that kind of stuff. I hate that, but you see it all the time, and it's like that basically gives them the right to tell me to take the trash out every day, and that's it. I'm a janitor now.
Carte blanche. Yeah, look, let's you can come in and help us design fuel tanks, but you're gonna drive a forklift every second Saturday, kind of thing.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I mean, is that valid? From a recruiter's perspective, does that hold? I mean, you see it on every job agreement or every employment offer or whatever. But I mean, I've fallen victim to that before, to where I'm being made to do shit that I don't want to do, and you signed this, you said that right there, you're going to do whatever we tell you to do, and I'm just like, well, then I no longer have a job, because then I quit. But anyway, I mean, but yeah.
What? I mean, that's probably that. There's probably not a whole. I'm sorry. What am I trying to say? It's not great that, especially if that's on almost every job description, because you're right, it kind of leads down that rabbit hole. Maybe if you can find maybe 2 red flags, like, hey, wear a lot of hats in other duties as assigned. And I don't think the other duties as assigned maybe is that dangerous, as long as they are succinct, like you said, in the job description and the responsibility. If you can kind of picture that pretty clearly, I would be less concerned about that, because that also just could be like the legality behind posting job description. That's just kind of like a CYA for them. But like, if you don't feel like it's succinct enough, or if you feel like it's a 3-page job description for what should be a 1 or 2-page resume, then I would kind of look at that as a red flag. The other thing that we've kind of thought about starting to experiment with is video in job descriptions. It's kind of like a passive way to engage candidates about the role. And I think you're right that it can take a lot of work to kind of like write and then go through multiple draft revisions of a job description. And 2, I think just like as human beings, right, we whenever we're writing something down, we're always going to be wired to make it more verbose than we might just say it. So I think video,
especially in this career field, right? Techies and security geeks and everything, right? I mean, that's what we do.
Right, exactly. But I think, like I said, one of the things that we're looking at with video is, instead of all that work, right? Or that good work that needs to be done is let's just have like post a 90-second video, a 3-minute video, and have either the hiring manager or, if available, I think what the most powerful thing would be team members of the team that you're hiring for, in the job description, post a link, or I hope at some point more of these job boards will have embedded videos, so you don't have to click out so much, but of them talking about what they expect of the role and how they'll interact with them. So that way you're almost killing 2 birds with 1 stone, in that.
That's a fantastic idea.
You're getting this, thank you. You're getting the succinctness of the job description, but you're also getting some insight into what the culture is at that company. And I think if you get
video job descriptions, and a produced video job description would be ideal. But even just the hiring manager talking to the camera, telling you, hey, I'd like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what we do here. That's freaking fantastic. And there's no excuse not to do that nowadays. In today's COVID culture of everything is Zoom, everything is StreamYard, everything is on video now. Everybody's using their webcams. There's no excuse not to do it.
Exactly. And you're sitting in front of a camera 8 to 12 hours a day anyway. Like take 3 minutes, take 5 minutes and do it. And then just put it out there, put it out into the ether. And probably the first 10 of them, you're going to be like, you're not going to come out the gate like Johnny Carson, right? But you're not supposed to. You're supposed to give an honest overview of the role. Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like I said, to drive more engagement and more buy-in. And I think too, without what I think the other side of that can be dangerous, though, is I've seen it more so in like SaaS companies, for like account executive type roles, are pre-recorded video interviews where they give you like a text prompt and then you answer it, and then like somebody often, like, I don't know where, is like viewing your video. And then
like the internship with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson.
Yeah, like I think that's a little impersonal too, especially if maybe I could excuse it if you have videos of the team on the job description and there's that efficiency. But if you're asked to say differently, don't ask of the candidate what you wouldn't ask of yourself.
That just reminds me of, get your seat close to mine. We can hear you. We can hear you. Hi, I'm Billy. It's like, anyway. So, like that's another thing too. Like, I don't want to spend any time talking about this. I just want to tell people I hate it. Is stupid questions like you're shrunken down to the size of a nickel and thrown into a blender. What do you do? It's like I hate those stupid questions because I know that I've been a perpetrator of giving those stupid questions, and there's really no real reason for giving stupid questions like that and claiming we want to see your creative thought process. No, it's just to screw with the candidates. Just admit it, everybody, because it's fun to do. But so actually, what we should do, and I challenge us to do this. We should either write an article together or have another episode, a short episode, like an outtake of OT Exposed, where we just talk about all of the red flags on the job descriptions. So it's like, we'll have the job description. It's like, you'll have the opportunity to carve your own path. Translation: we don't know what the hell you'll be doing. We hope you figure it out. And it's like, we're looking for a self-starter. Translation: you won't be supervised. We hope you show up to work. And it's like all these, you see these same key phrases and keywords on every job description, but like, what do they really mean? Right. It's like, things like, and other duties that may be required. We're going to ask you to do a whole bunch of shit you don't want to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. So like that's an entire episode or a funny but useful article we could write. And, you as a recruiter, you've seen it all. And we, hearing from candidates, like, we know what all that means. We've been in this industry long enough to know what all that means. And I think that would probably be a more helpful handbook to candidates and hiring managers than just about anything else, to say, look, hiring managers don't say this, because candidates, when you do see this is what that means.
Exactly. And I think that it's just to take away from that. Like, I think the most important thing for candidates, especially cybersecurity, to keep awareness of, even if you're looking for a role, like, this is a candidate market. Like, we own the market. Not we as in candidate, as in the pays, but you have the power in the market right now. Companies, I don't want to say need you more than you need them, but if you have experience, or you're marketing yourself the right way, or if you have a strong network and a strong community, is your tolerance for things like that should be rightfully low. And make sure that you bring awareness on that, because it's not like 5-10 years ago where companies could get away with asking you questions like that and you would smile and answer it, because like I said, it's a cybersecurity candidate marketplace. And to say it differently, like I said earlier, is ask of the candidate of what you would ask of yourself. And if you don't expect the candidate to ask you questions like that, why are you asking the candidate stuff like that when it's a candidate market right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, man, so this has been an interesting conversation, because like, there's been at least for me, there's been so many epiphanies that have come out of this, so many aha moments that have come out of this, and realizations that I think need to be applied to the workforce in all aspects. One thing we didn't talk about much was, what can recruiters do? What can be done to help recruiters? And I think this is one thing that's never talked about, because here's the way recruiters are viewed in this workspace, in general, but especially in cybersecurity. When we need you, you're like Jon Snow, King of the North. When we don't need you, you're, little bastard Ramsay Snow, leave me alone. You're annoying. You suck. And that's kind of how you guys get treated. And that's, for those of you that don't know, that was Game of Thrones reference.
Come on, please. If you don't watch Game of Thrones, just stop watching right now. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. There's no place for you in this. There's no place for you in cybersecurity if you don't follow Game of Thrones. In fact, that's a requirement. So up in the requirements must be a Game of Thrones fan. That would be my requirement. I'm just kidding. Don't listen to me. No, but so that you guys that's how you're treated, right? It's like, you're our best friend when we need you. And when we don't need you, you're annoying as hell to me. Stay the hell away from me. I don't want to talk to you. Unfriend. And so, so from a recruiter's perspective, like, what can make your life easier from hiring managers and from candidates? How do we help you help us?
So I think it's a great question. And I think it's this. I think it's ask of yourself with hiring managers, ask candidates, and what candidates ask of themselves is, and I think you actually asked this question too at the end of your talk, or maybe it was a different one, but I'm pretty sure it was yours, is how do I live it? Like, how do I live the life of cybersecurity and IT? If as a recruiter, you don't have a good answer for that, you're going to get treated like that. Just bottom line. I think you need to, if you want to be effective and you want to have a good career and good relationship, you have to be willing to give more than you get and just show up. There's an event, show up. If somebody's just starting out and they just need a quick resume review, even if you don't give them a resume review, give them 15, 20 minutes, give them a strategy, give them a framework, and build the relationship from there. Because I can almost guarantee you, especially in cybersecurity, they're going to get a role, and they're going to remember how you helped them or not. So I think that's the most important thing. I think the rest of it is kind of peripheral to that. I think just be a part of the community. Come on, join podcasts, when you get invited. Go to events, volunteer. Figure out what your local market or your community or even what your interests within cybersecurity or IT, whatever you're recruiting for, are like. So for me specifically, mine is OT, right? Because of my manufacturing background. That's where I want to live. I'm helping with everything else, but and I obviously I can't be an expert in everything, but this is where I know I want to be an expert and have passion for. And I think recruiters and clients pick up on that. And I think when you aren't genuine, when you don't have integrity, when you're acting more like a real estate agent than a career consultant, they pick up on that right away, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty important. And that I know that recruiters, I could tell you right now that when I get a recruiter and it looks like all they're doing is just playing the numbers game and blasting out, hey, you look like a perfect candidate for this. Really? Because I don't do web design, because I may have had something on my resume that said, they're just blasting stuff out. Like as a hiring manager or a candidate, I would never use that recruiter. I would also, I also don't like the ploys that are being used nowadays too, which is, hey, you ready for a change? You look like you'd be a great candidate for this, for the following job description. Because obviously I know you guys don't have the time to read every single profile on LinkedIn and all this stuff like that. So it is a numbers game. And yes, I do get offended sometimes when it's like, I'm the CEO of this company. I've been the CEO of this company for almost 5 years. I'm clearly not looking for a senior analyst role. Right. And I understand that you guys don't have the time to read, so I shouldn't get offended, but I do because I get offended at everything anyway. But I think the reality of it is that, I also get angry when recruiters are like doing that and they're like, but if you're not interested, let me know if you know somebody who might be interested. And that's kind of the networking thing, but it's so impersonal. So I think that, and I don't know how all industries are, but I know in the OT industry specifically, it's a relationship industry. And the greater cybersecurity industry at large is a relationship industry, right? So you know what? You want to be my recruiter, whether I'm a hiring manager or a candidate, get to know me a little bit, take the time to at least try to have a conversation with me. But at a very minimal, even if you're not going to be that type of a recruiter, at least know the industry, because there's nothing worse than you have a generic run-of-the-mill recruiter trying to act like they know what's going on in cybersecurity, especially in ICS and OT. You got to be able to talk the talk as a recruiter. You, like you said, right? You come from an industry that you're recruiting into. That's awesome. But if you don't, as a recruiter, at least still learn something about the industry that you're recruiting for. I know that recruiting is hard. You can't not everybody can specialize in a particular industry or vertical, but you can at least learn something about the industry or the vertical you're recruiting into and know what these keywords are, know what these certifications are and stuff like that. That's my advice to recruiters.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just act with intention. Because like you're saying, it can go one or two ways where people will get offended or people will buy into you. Because much like cybersecurity and OT security, recruiting is a very relational industry, right? And when the strongest recruiters I know, the strongest business development people that I work with, they all understand that it's much more effective, and to say it indirectly, you're more successful when you have strong candidates versus strong or big strong candidates versus big clients. And let me say that differently. It's easier to be effective marketing strong candidates to clients than it is clients to candidates. And I think that would be a different approach I might think about. And just say, look at who you're working with. Who are your gunners? Who are your incubators? Who are, like for the next 6 months or a year, and who is just kind of starting out. But you meet with the person, they're just starting out, you see they have potential, help them out. Even if you don't have roles for them, help them out, because they will remember you. And like I said, it's the most important thing is to give more than you get, because people pick up on that, because it is a small community, and the results will come.
And I think that's just advice for life in general anyway, but especially in cybersecurity, right? Number one, always hope to get something in return. It's okay to hope to get something in return, but always be willing to give more than you give. Give more than you get, but especially in cybersecurity, right? I talked about that in my talk, which is, be willing to contribute, put things on your resume. And you know what? And here's the thing. Let me kind of start closing out here with this. Number one, if you did miss my talk at HughesCon, which was basically hacking the cybersecurity workforce, tips for hiring managers and candidates, and kind of sharing my story, how I found success, and ways that I see other people finding success. If you missed that talk, I think that they're going to have that posted, the video posted somewhere at some point. If they don't, and even if they do, I'm probably going to redo that presentation here in an OT exposed format. I'm just going to give that presentation again so it's out there, because I think that it, from the feedback I got, it reached a lot of people, and I think we need to get that message out there. So I'll be doing that. Also, I would like to have you on again, Alan, to talk about two things. Number one, I would like to talk with you and a candidate and a hiring manager. I'd like to get the trifecta and get everybody talking about this. I think that would be a fantastic episode and a perspective that really no one's talking about. And by the way, I would also like to get more perspective from more hiring managers, more candidates, more recruiters, especially, hey, other recruiters out there that know me, looking at you, Drew, looking at you, Eric, looking at you, Ryan. Your last name is Eric, son. Yeah, I just called you out. Get a hold of me. No, he's good. Two of the best recruiters I've ever known in my life. And they haven't known you long enough to say that yet, but you sound like a damn good recruiter, Alan. But Drew Horsley and Ryan Erickson, two of the best, and they don't sponsor this. I'm plugging them because it's a shameless plug. We're not going to hit it, but two of the best recruiters I've known, because they live that, right? They know the industry. They know cybersecurity. They know ICS. They know, Drew puts out a video quite often about the trials and tribulations he's having as a recruiter, and it's fantastic. So you guys want to come on the show, welcome, come on the show. Maybe we can get 3 recruiters on the show. We can have like this recruiter. Yeah, never mind. Anyway, so, let's see if we can keep this conversation going, because I think that the industry is not having this conversation with recruiters as much as I think that we should. And it was a great recommendation when we met that day at HughesCon for you to come up with this. So thank you very much. So this is your spotlight now. So you work for Hayes Technology, and tell us a little bit about what you do there, what your philosophy is, and how you guys go about it to close us out.
Absolutely. No, and thank you for that. And it's been a pleasure today as well. Hayes Technology, like I mentioned earlier, we've been around as a company, Hayes, for 50 years. We've been operating our T practice in Texas for the last 20, and have had a dedicated cybersecurity practice for the last 5 years. We were the first, we were the only one. Now we are definitely still the first one, and we still are the largest. And our philosophy is people first, and connecting the best talent with the best roles. And we are growing through leaps and bounds every single day. But I think, like I said, the most important thing is that the people we have working with, the people that I'm working with, the candidates that we're working with, it's very exciting, because we're all working common goal, and with the clients that we're working with. So be happy to have a conversation. Please come and join us. We'd love to hear your perspectives, see how we might be able to support, and let's start there. Let's build a relationship. Let's build something.
Key point there. Let's build a relationship, because that's what this is all about. So anyway, Alan Vargas, thank you for joining us, the first recruiter we've had on our show. And this has been an excellent conversation. Certainly kind of went directions I didn't expect it to, because there's so much meat on the bone here, so much to talk about from a recruiter's perspective in the workforce. In fact, I'm going to hook you up with my other friends that have workforce channels like Simply Cyber, Jerry Ozier over there, and talk about this from the recruiter perspective, because I think this is a perspective the rest of the industry is kind of leaving in the corners, in the shadows, and not including. And you guys don't get the recognition that you should have, and you get treated like crap. So, I want to make sure that there's usually three parties in hiring, right? I mean, there's the hiring manager, or the hiring side, and then there's the candidate side. And a lot of times there's the recruiter in the middle, and they have to be in the conversation too. So again, thanks for joining us. We will see everybody in 2 weeks, because remember, I know I still have to fix the graphic image, and I'm sorry, but we're doing these every 2 weeks now, as opposed to every week. That's just due to the workflow right now and everything that's going on. We'll revisit whether we want to start doing these every week again after the new year and all that stuff like that. But we're still going to be bringing you content, still bringing you interesting conversations. And that also leaves room on the in-between weeks. We can do those little special, hey, let's do a little one-off broadcast about, like we mentioned, like, hey, let's look at all the red flags and what they really mean. Something fun like that. It leaves room for that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's what we're doing. That's our cadence, our new cadence, everybody. Thanks for joining us, Alan. And I'm finally actually going to say goodbye.
Have a good one.